Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us for this Monday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. No watches, warnings, or advisories for weather or the rivers or streams, but there is increasing fire danger occurring here with the hot, dry conditions we've had for several days. Yukon Flats, extreme fire danger in the red area there, bigger than it was yesterday. And also the high fire zone here expanding as well with areas of extreme fire danger along the eastern Alaska Range and to the north there into the mid-Tanana Valley, out toward Tanana, high fire danger, and now connecting into the Copper River Basin there, where there's some extreme fire danger around Gulkana. That due to some of the increase due to the winds that kicked up today, gusts 25 to 30 miles an hour being recorded at Gulkana at the airport. And the eastern Alaska Range passes, seeing gusts, or expecting to see gusts, forecast to see gusts as high as 40 miles an hour. Big Delta seeing gusts to 35 miles an hour today, and windy pass at about 25 miles an hour out of the south. So that really boosted the fire danger there. The temperatures in the 80s. And moving on to satellite imagery, you can see clear skies, sunshine, resulting in the hot weather conditions with very warm air aloft. That extended down to the Copper River Basin. Nice day across the Panhandle once again, with some areas reaching the lower 80s over the southern southeast coast there, with lots of 70s. A little cooler out along the coastline there, where there was some more of a marine influence, as it usually is. And we had this frontal boundary right through here, low pressure back along the Alaska Peninsula. That pushed some rain on up across the Kenai Peninsula today, reaching just about into the Anchorage area with very light rain. And then down Cook Inlet, Kenai area into Iliamna, and also along western Cook Inlet, especially southwest Cook Inlet here, with kind of a damp, cloudy day across Kodiak Island, all of Bristol Bay, right on down the Alaska Peninsula, the eastern Aleutians. We've got moisture out here over the western Aleutians, producing some areas of light rain, nothing very significant at all, just has the higher top clouds there, associated with a weak trough. And then high pressure up over the northern Bering Sea, and not too bad up in the northwest as well. I have a boundary here resulting in some convection starting to fire up with thunderstorms popping up there just east in the Lotto Hills, right about in this area here. And that'll continue into tonight. Probably to see some thunderstorm activity along these clouds off to the northeast to the Brooks Range, possibly even the eastern North Slope, maybe the eastern Arctic coast as well. On the chart today, you can see the thunderstorm line right through there. Not a big outbreak, but there was some strikes, concentrated areas of strikes, especially over towards the Nulato Hills there. And I'll probably expand northeastward here as the afternoon and early evening wears on. Otherwise sunny and hot here with temperatures well into the 80s and lower 90s in some locations. See Eagle up to 90 degrees at 3 o'clock this afternoon. Beaver, 91 degrees, and Chokyitzik, 92 degrees at 3 p.m. this afternoon. And also, record high was tied at Northway today. The record high was 84, 3 p.m., 84 degrees at Northway. Probably will break it, and maybe even Delta Junction possibly as well. They're 82 degrees with a gusty wind. Kind of hard to say. That may be a little tougher to break since their record is something like 86 degrees, I believe. Otherwise, about 2/10 of an inch of rain. Big contrast here from north to south across the state with cool and rainy conditions. Kenai picking up 2/10 of an inch of rain, and Iliamna about 1/3 of an inch, while King Salmon had nearly half an inch of rain, 12-hour period ending at 3 p.m. this afternoon with, again, cloudy, damp conditions all of Bristol Bay, up into the southwest mountains, back along the Alaska Peninsula there. Low clouds covering all of the Bering Sea just about, Pribilof Islands. A little bit of light rain, drizzle, and fog with that weak trough out there to the west. And for the forecast for tonight, look for the low clouds and fog to increase along the southeast coast here. I think any drizzle will remain offshore, but you never know. Some might work in toward the coastline. Low clouds will try to push into the inside waters to some certain extent, but probably not making it to the border. Stay mild, warm, and dry with diminishing winds there for the Copper River Basin, as well as the Alaska Range passes. And then still along this weak boundary here, diminishing thunderstorms, possibly lingering in toward midnight, but even the showers will be diminishing, possibly ending toward morning. And then high pressure makes for light winds, low clouds, fog for all the Chukchi Sea through the Bering Strait, St. Lawrence Island. Could see a little bit of clearing there. Areas of low clouds and fog possible mainly on the western Arctic coast or off the coast. Not much change out here over the Bering Sea, just lots of low clouds, fog, fairly light winds. Areas of light rain or drizzle, mostly drizzle variety here, possibly on the north shores of the eastern or the Fox Islands there. And then rain here over the southwest interior, again, areas of along the very slow moving frontal boundary here. Now keep a chance of rain all night long for the Kenai Peninsula again, possibly up in the western Prince William Sound and western Cook Inlet. And for tomorrow, again, that front really doesn't move a whole lot in the low, hanging just south of roughly Sand Point there, about 1,008 millibars. So no big wind associated with it, and really no heavy rain either with this, just cool, damp conditions again for western Prince William Sound. Looks like stays cloudy for at least Cook Inlet, breaking out probably the northern Susitna Valley, another mostly sunny day, highs into the 80s again, mid to upper 80s. Upper Yukon Valley, probably lose the 90s tomorrow, possibly, with 80s though remaining. Eagle on down in the 40-mile country over to about Fairbanks. Then this boundary here, which just separating the hot conditions off to the east and southeast from cooler conditions back to the northwest. Look for some isolated to scattered thunderstorms possibly could break out along that line tomorrow by late morning into the afternoon. And out over the Bering Sea, no change, no big storms at all, just lots of low clouds, fog, a little enhancement of the precipitation again with that weak trough, which is also pretty slow moving. And the southeast coast, whatever fog and low clouds develop will tend to burn back to the coastline, hopefully off the coastline in the afternoon. But then that pushes back in Tuesday night, and then Wednesday, look for an increasing chance of rain from Port Alexander up to Elfin Cove, Yakutat, while the inland waters and eastern part of the Panhandle stay mostly sunny. Otherwise, sunny again, temperatures in the lower to mid 80s here, so slow cooling trend starting up over the eastern interior with this boundary pushing a little bit farther to the east now, getting nudged over by the high, 1,018 millibar high over the Chukchi Sea. So it'll be cooler but dry back to the northwest with some areas of sunshine. Low clouds and fog again anywhere over the open water, Norton Sound, Chukchi Sea, east, Arctic coast into the southeast Bering Sea, with still this trough out here to the west keeps a chance of light rain and drizzle. And that's about it. Again, no big storms in sight for the Bering Sea or the Aleutians. This low still hanging stationary south of the Alaska Peninsula. And for the lows tonight, quite mild, 50s to lower 60s from the upper Yukon Valley all the way back into the Yukon Delta, cooling into the mid 50s out toward the coast, and lows near 60 even up in the Kobuk Valley. Around 50 for the North Slope, otherwise 40s for the Arctic coast, and very mild 50s for the Panhandle, and highs tomorrow back into the near 80 degrees in some areas, with mid to upper 80s over the eastern interior, near 80 for the Kuskokwim Valley areas, near 60 along the Arctic coast, 70s over the North Slope, and 50s and 60s elsewhere. High or lows 55 to 60 here northeast interior for Wednesday morning. Pretty mild, mid to upper 50s all the way out to the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, lower 50s out at Nunivak Island, 40s, mid to upper there for the Bering Sea and the Aleutians, and mid to upper 50s for the lows and Panhandle. Highs Wednesday afternoon, lower to mid 80s eastern interior, 70s over the southeast coast.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
First flying weather graphic shows good VFR over interior Alaska with IFR and marginal VFR right along the coastline there in the Arctic and through the Bering Strait, St. Lawrence Island. Of course, much of the Bering Aleutians in the IFR zone, right up the Alaska Peninsula at Kodiak, Gulf of Alaska over to the coastal areas of the southeast Panhandle, and also some IFR developing on the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range. Then for the afternoon, that retreats back down to the south here, maybe persisting, but definitely for Barren Islands, Kamishak Bay, looks like IFR as well as Kodiak Island, Gulf of Alaska, and staying off the coast, VFR for the Panhandle, VFR in the interior, all the way up to and beyond the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, maybe some marginal stuff hanging around Point Barrow, then back to the VFR, no change out in the west. Outlook for Wednesday morning. No change here in the west. Bering Sea Aleutians holding pretty much in a stationary status quo of IFR through the Bering Strait. Back onto the western and central Arctic coast. VFR on the east side, VFR in the interior. No change here for the south central area of the IFR along the east side of the Alaska Range. Barren Islands, Kodiak. Really no change on over to the Panhandle except the IFR and marginal stuff creeping up and socking in the coastline a little bit better. And then for the afternoon Wednesday, kind of holds here, maybe dissipates back a little bit, especially in toward the land areas. Staying VFR though over the interior there of the Panhandle as well as interior Alaska, North Slope. Pretty good afternoon. Generally VFR with the marginal VFR on the east side and IFR hugging the coastline on the west side. VFR breaking out now there over the central Bering Sea with a little bit less in the way of IFR now, especially down along the central eastern Aleutians, Kodiak Island, Alaska Peninsula, a little bit of an improvement. IFR though for the southwest mountains. Anatuvik looks good again tomorrow. VFR, chance of a thunderstorm for Adigan, otherwise no change. And for Lake Clark and Merrill, VFR with marginal VFR on both eastern entrances there. And for Rainy, looks like it'll be VFR. There'll be some clouds moving in, but of the VFR variety. And for Windy, good VFR. Isabel, VFR, same forecast from Antasta, another VFR day coming up as well as Tanita. And for Portage, marginal, generally a downward trend throughout the day. Starting out marginal, trending toward IFR, or could start out VFR and trend toward marginal VFR, but the conditions will be deteriorating throughout the day, Tuesday. And for Chilkoot and White, VFR. Freezing levels, coolest out here from the southwest coast to the eastern Aleutians, Alaska, about 8,000 feet, also up on the central coast. Otherwise, 12,000 here as that upper level ridge hangs on over western North America and continues to dominate the Panhandle as well as the eastern into the central interior. And then warming back up out to the west there again, up to 14,000 feet. Icing, southeast flow enhanced here by the terrain could result in considerable moderate rime icing in that narrow band there, otherwise light to isolated moderate here in the lighter shaded area, above about 10,000 feet though, so as long as you're under 10,000 feet, things should be okay, or you'd be out of the icing anyway. Upper level ridge at upper air chart here showing it right over the southern Panhandle, roughly centered there, but still a pretty good ridge up into the Yukon, Northwest Territories, and still dominating much of eastern and central interior Alaska, but the trough becoming a little more dominant, especially for southern Alaska here, and of course Kodiak Island, the Aleutians, and another ridge popping up farther out to the west. 3,000 or 9,000 feet. Southeast, pretty good southeast flow at this level, 25 to 40 knots across the Barents into Kamishak Bay. East 20 there across the Auckland Mountains, and about 30 knots for the Alaska Peninsula. Northerlies 25 to 30 central western Aleutians. Southwest 25 to 30 on the western Arctic coast. And southerlies at about 10 knots there for the Panhandle. 3,000 feet, light southerly flow, still close enough to the ridge, keep the winds pretty light there, but trending towards light southerly. 20 to 25 up to the North Gulf Coast, light over the interior. Southwest though, central western Arctic coast, 25 to 30 knots. And easterlies, or southeast, east-southeast, about 35 coming off the Alaska Range here, cutting in toward the Kilburg Mountains. And northerlies, about 20 over the eastern Aleutians, maybe 25 for the western areas. And turbulence-wise, occasional moderate chop here with the mechanical turbulence, Barren Islands across the southwest and maybe out over the far western Aleutians. And after the break, I'll return with a look at the marine forecasts and other interesting information.
We have cleaned over 1,500 miles of shoreline now.
Basically, it comes down to just human muscle. I mean, we use chainsaws, and knives.
We find stuff from like Russia and China and Korea, Vietnam, Malaysia. It really doesn't matter where it comes from. We all just have to clean it out.
Our goal right now in the next 10 or 11 days before the end of this year is just to see how much we can collect before we get to remove it.
What you see on the beach is a fraction of what's out there. You can pretty much break it down into 3 or 4 things. Water bottles, a lot of water bottles, styrofoam, fishing nets, fishing buoys. And that's 99% of what you find on the beach. Basically just go along with chainsaws and muscle and get the garbage, put it in sacks, and then from there we haul it up above the log jam so it's out of any heavy surf or winter storms if it's going to stay there for the year, and put it in super sacks. So yeah, we just progressively work down the coast, just day in and day out.
We have like daily goals for ourselves that, like, if we're working at a pretty good rate, we'd like to keep on pace with about, like, I don't know, about 20 to 25 super sacks a day. So this is pile 102, and in this pile right now we have 2 super sacks and 1 set of buoys. June 23rd here, this is what we've done today. We're up to 25 super sacks on the day, and I think for now we'll call it and just keep cleaning until tomorrow.
My name is Hannah, and I represent a organization in Japan called Japan Environmental Action Network. With over 20 people working together to clean up the beach, this is amazing. Like, we all need to work together to, clean up the beach as much as possible. So like every single time I go back to Japan, I talk to the fishermen, and the fishermen's like, it's a joke, but they're like, if you find any buoy with my logo, you gotta bring it back, and like always looking out for that stuff.
The crew's awesome. I mean, we're all skiers or snowboarders, and we're all friends. I mean, we're all good friends. My dad started it. He's the man behind the desk. He makes the ball roll for sure. He works hard. He doesn't give up easy, which is good.
This stuff is uplifted quite a ways during the earthquake. Well, I think my bag's about full already. Yeah. I'm gonna take a quick look back in here. Somebody else is back here. The thing about marine debris is it's kind of a hidden problem. Unless you're out there, especially on these remote beaches that are so heavily impacted, people don't see it. I remember probably a good 20 years ago, I was out on the outside of Montague Island, flew out there, and I was just utterly astounded by all the garbage out there. You walk out there and you wade through this stuff and you go, this isn't right, this shouldn't happen.
I think a lot of it's just awareness. I mean, I've been boating out here for a long time, and I wasn't even aware of how extensive the marine debris problem is out here, but it's a consumer world out there for sure. I mean, I don't know where people's values are, I guess, but mine is you got to kind of have a little bit of respect for the environment, and considering we live in it, especially in Alaska. I mean, a lot of people like the outdoors and like to be part of the outdoors. That's why they live here, and it's they don't necessarily want to see it trashed.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed this segment. On today's sea ice analysis, not a lot changed from yesterday. Of course, big open area out here, and heavier ice several days ago, actually late last week, lifted off the Arctic coast there from Point Barrow to Point Franklin, and the area up here continues to slowly thaw and thin out up through here, an extension from what began some time ago in the Mackenzie River Bay. And the main breakup area of melding is occurring here along the Russian coastline. And for the coastal water forecast, northwest 10 to 15 for the south coast of the outer panhandle tomorrow. Otherwise, inside waters, northwest light 10 knots, 2-foot seas, south Tandling Canal, 2-foot seas. West winds are variable to west here on the north coast, light at 10 knots with 3 to 4-foot seas. Outlook for Wednesday, those pick up 15 knots out of the southeast on the north coast, seas at about 5 feet, 4-foot seas, 10 to 15 knot winds on the south coast. Northwest 15 for Clarence Strait, Stevens Passage southwest at 10, and southerlies at 15 for Northern Lane Canal. And moving to Prince William Sound, east winds 10 knots tomorrow with 2-foot seas, a little brisker in the North Gulf Coast with 20 knots there on Middleton Island, increased to small craft advisory level winds out of the east there for the western North Gulf Coast of Barren Islands. Southern Cook Inlet and Kamishak Bay all have small craft advisories out for tomorrow with seas as high as 7 feet here. And Northern Cook Inlet, northeast up to about 20 with 5-foot seas. Outlook for Wednesday, northeast 15 for Northern Cook Inlet, north-south of the Forelands at about 20, east 20 for Kamishak Bay. Small craft advisories continue for the Barren Islands, western North Gulf Coast, east side, southeast 20 with 6-foot seas. Prince William Sound, northeast of 15, seas 2 feet. Kodiak Island, southeast 15 on the eastern areas here. Shelikof Strait, northeast of 20. Same thing for Bristol Bay. And looks like southeast winds here on the Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula at 10 to 15 knots. Bering Sea side, north at 15. With the outlook on Wednesday shaping up like this, small craft advisories, Shelikof Strait, northeast 25, southeast 20 on the east side of Kodiak. Now Sitkinak to Castle Cape, east winds at 20 knots. Castle Cape to Cape Sarachev, north at 15. Bering Sea side, northeast of 15, and Bristol Bay, east at 15 knots with 3-foot seas. Western Aleutians, west-northwest, 15 to 20 knots. Not too bad for the central Aleutians, about 20 knot winds expected there out of the northwest. 20 to maybe 25 knot winds in the forecast for the Fox Islands. Seas running 4 to 5 feet, maybe up to 6 feet out to the west. And for the Wednesday outlook, north 15 to 20 for the Fox Islands, northwest 20 for Adak and Atka, west-northwest 20 for the western zones. Southwest coast, south of Nunivak Island, we've got a 20 knot northeast wind in the forecast for tomorrow there, and north 20 for the Pribilofs and St. Matthew Island. Lighter winds out of the north, 10 to 15 knots from Nunivak Island right up actually into the Bering Strait with just about no wind at all, Norton Sound. But that'll pick up to 15 knots on Wednesday there, west 15 for St. Lawrence Island, north 20 north of Nunivak Island, northeast 15 south of the island, north 15 in the Pribilofs, and the northern Bering Sea there around St. Matthew Island, west of 20. And for the eastern Beaufort Sea coastline tomorrow, east-southeast 10 to 15. Then pick it up to 20 knots from the south here on the central coast. And we get into brisk wind advisories from about Point Lay on over to the Cape Thompson area there. South 25, 6-foot seas, and then back down to 15 knots for the Chukchi Sea. They'll swing around to the north at 10 knots from Wales all the way up to Cape Beaufort. And then westerlies at 15 dominate the outer coastline there, or the marine zones, all the way over to Demarcation Point. For tonight, diminishing thunderstorms here and shower activity along that narrow boundary, separating the hotter conditions of the east-southeast from the cooler but dry conditions back to the northwest. Rain continues, light rain at times, except right along the frontal boundary, a little bit heavier there. I mentioned Dave King Sound picking about ½ an inch, but areas of light rain for the Kenai Peninsula, Cook Inlet, ending in the Susitna Valley, just clouds there, and winds diminishing over the Copper River Basin and through the Alaska Range passes, but expected to pick back up tomorrow and actually through Wednesday for the Alaska Range with those gusts possibly 40 miles an hour. Sunny and hot again tomorrow, eastern interior, maybe losing the 90s though. Rain chances continue. Kenai Peninsula, Cook Inlet, Kodiak Island, right on down the Alaska Peninsula, the Fox Islands. Next day, Wednesday, a little cooler, but still in the 80s over the eastern interior.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.